I think I'm far enough away from you. Let's think about those who are not with us. They probably are thinking about us. I even suggest us, if each of us call someone that wasn't here and let them know how much we miss them, how much good will that do? That one person who needs encouragement, that one person who's a little bit down because they can't get out, a familiar voice, a familiar name that they hear that's calling, could be the one cheerful thing in their day. So let's reach out to those that are not here. Just last week, I was thinking about everybody. We couldn't come together. And I regret we made that decision in one way, but I know it was the best thing. And maybe we kept somebody from getting sick. Although I'm not sure if there's anything that keep us from getting sick through this stuff. And so this morning I want us to think about the power of one. We hear responsibilities, we hear challenges, we say, well, who's going to do this? Who's going to do that? Or we make excuses. You know what? I don't know that I can do that. I don't have talent to do that. It's beyond my ability. It's beyond my finances. It's beyond my willingness to put that much out of it. I don't know that it's worth doing. But there's that opportunity, that one individual who says, I can make a difference. Nehemiah is such a story. And while my lesson doesn't necessarily come from Nehemiah, he makes a very important point for this idea of the influence of one individual. If it had not been for Nehemiah, who would have stood up? Remember when the plague was causing thousands of death as it rolled over the masses of Israelites? And it was like a wave of death. Here comes Aaron with the staff and a fire. He runs. And where he puts it in the ground, death ends. The pestilence, the plague, comes to an end. How many people does he save? If it had not been his initiative to go forth, think, I'm only one person. He could have had all kinds of excuses, but he went. Nehemiah, here's a man who heard that Jerusalem was in total destruction. He heard about how it burned. Prayed, and he wept, and he said, I'm only one, but I can go to the king. And really, his countenance was sad, and the king noticed, Nehemiah, you're not sick. Why are you like this? And so really, just being concerned, crying for his homeland, his hometown, king noticed and asked, what's wrong, Nehemiah? When we look around to our family, to our brethren, we can tell when a person's not himself, herself. We know when something's not tip-top shape. And we that are concerned will ask, what's the matter? What's going on? And we get the answer. And then we have the opportunity to help. And here's Nehemiah going and answering that king, you know what? I'm saddened about Jerusalem. The city is in ruin. The walls are destroyed. The temple is burned. There's a remnant who are troubled and hurting. Would you think about the possibility of allowing me to return home to see what I could do to help? And the king granted him. Imagine this heathen king carrying enough. How long do you need before you can return back here? And there was an agreement. In my mind, I think, why go in the first place? Go and change a little bit and then come back to slavery and servanthood there in Babylon? But Nehemiah thought, it needs to be done. Those people still living there need a place to worship, need safety, need things rebuilt. And when he's released, and him and a good number returned back to Jerusalem, one morning Nehemiah, on his own, goes out, not telling anyone, especially Tobiah and Sanballat, to those men who had remained, were not killed, but to men who had given up their faith. And here's Nehemiah checking things, surveying, observing what needs to be done. And he takes it to the people. There in chapter 2 and 3, it gives a long list of the people there who have a mind, a willingness to work. And in chapter 5 it says, those who were willing and put their hands together, they rebuilt it. I believe 52 days. What an accomplishment. But if it had not been for the influence of one man, Nehemiah, and you could go to that Old Testament book and read more about the accomplishments that they did. And you can be influenced even by Nehemiah. You don't need an appointment. You don't need a name like elder, deacon. You don't need an official title. You as a disciple have received the challenge to make a difference, not only in your family, but in your neighborhood, in the congregation. People who see something that needs to be done, and you say, I am here. I'm going to do it. Let's think about another one. Probably you haven't heard of this man's name. Out of the top 10 great influencers in the Old Testament, you probably wouldn't, after even reading his name, even put him there. Maybe even the top 50. When you look at his name this morning, I think you'll realize the importance of one individual who says, yes, God, use me. His willingness. And he's a craftsman. And we read there in Exodus chapter 31, verses 2 through 5, I have filled Bezaleel, the Spirit of God, with the ability and intelligence, with knowledge and all craftsmanship to devise artistic design, to work in gold and silver and bronze and cutting stones for setting and carving wood, to work every craft. Here's specifically something that God did to an individual. Now, just because God gave it to him doesn't mean he'd use it. When we think about Matthew 25, a subject we studied just recently on a Wednesday night class about the individuals who received different talents, the 1 5, the 1 2, and the one who only received one talent, and how they responded and in obedience increased what they were given. But the one we know dug a hole, put it in, and was so happy to return that one to the master, thinking, well, at least I didn't lose it. At least it wasn't stolen. But God wasn't pleased with them. And here's this Bezaleel. He worked and he finished his work so plainly described in Exodus 37 and 38. And for the most part, we quickly glance over it and easily think, well, here's one of the several of the elements of worship for the Israelites. In Exodus 37 verse 1 says he crafted and built the Ark of the Covenant. And you watch the Israelites as they travel from place to place, and as it goes before them, it is the symbol of God's power with the Israelites. Later on, when it's captured, Israel's lost until it's returned. The Ark of the Covenant became a very important image, even though no ordinary person could see it, because as it was put in the most holy place, the priest uncovered it. So the priest, the high priest, the only ones that really got to see the beauty behind that piece of furniture, if you want to call it. They were told about it, but it had a covering. So the normal eye didn't see the beauty and the craftsmanship that Bezaleel put into it. So you read about it, he created it, and we think, okay, it's there. Verse 10 of chapter 37, he made the table of showbread. He made the lampstand in verse 17. He made the altar of incense, verse 25. And he made the altar burning the offering of sacrifices, verse 38, verse 1. And notice that altar sit in front of the tabernacle as the place of sacrifice to God. For centuries and generations later, when young Solomon was taking his first steps as Israel's third king, he assembled Israel at Gibeon. Before the tent of meeting, we call the tabernacle, the place of assembly, the place where holy worship is taken, where God comes down, and in the tent, in that most holy place, he takes seat on the mercy seat between the wings of the cherubim. And how do people know? The demonstration is obvious. Either a cloud or a pillar of fire. When he's on Mount Sinai, it trembles, it shakes. God is sitting. God is near. He's in the mount. There in 2 Chronicles chapter 1, verses 5 through 6. Moreover, the bronze altar that Bezaleel, the son of Uriah, son of Hur, had made, was there before the tabernacle of the Lord. And Solomon and the assembly sought it out. And Solomon went up there to the bronze altar before the Lord, which was at the tent of meeting, and offered 1,000 burnt offerings on it. That night, life-changing, an event for Solomon, history-changing for Israel, that God appeared and said to the inexperienced king, "Ask what ye shall, and I'll give it to you." And he asked about wisdom. How can I rule? This kingdom is vast. Multitudes of people. I feel inadequate. God gave him 2 measures of wisdom that none have reached from then till now. What an incredible invitation. What do you want? We believe in prayer. Do we believe in God granting a response? Oh, he'll respond. Probably not the exact way we think he will, but he answers prayer. But what an amazing night. A night that followed today that centered around the old altar. All because one man says, God, use my hands. You've given me this talent. And with tools, the hammer and the chisel, and Nathan electrified. He didn't have to worry about a battery going dead. His muscles, with minute care, striking with a hammer, sanding, he created these works of art. Sometime read the description of that altar. About that box that held the bowl of manna and Aaron's rod that had budded, and the 10 Commandments. Read about his work, all by that one craftsman named Bezaleel. It says in Exodus 32:22, Bezaleel, the son of Uri, son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah, made all that the Lord had commanded Moses. Because of the influence of Moses, he was able to say, when it was all finished and done, God, we've done it. Everything that you've commanded, it's finished. And I can imagine, just as the day creation was finished and God said it was good, God was pleased with these men who created the tent, the tabernacle, and the system, the practical, literal elements of their worship. And his work had such impact upon the family of Israel for years and decades, centuries. We don't know how long he lived. We don't know what age he died, where he was buried. We don't know his lineage. But here's a man who we see did what he could. How many priests faithfully served at his handiwork at the table, who carried the Ark of the Covenant, who killed and processed the animals that were brought and placed upon the altar to burn them as sacrifices? How many fearful hearts took courage as the ark, which was constructed by him, who were felt relief or carried it before them in battle? How many children's classes around the world have been shown artistic imaginations of the tent and the ark? And children have been impressed and have been led by the knowledge that God chose a people for himself, so that a Messiah would come forth from the tribe of Judah. How thankful we ought to be for men and women whose ability and intelligence, with knowledge, artistic design, craftsmanship, continue to impact God's family or strangers, little children. The brother who built the pulpit from which thousands of sermons have come. Things around even our building. David will point to podiums that are in the Bible class wing. And he says, you know who built that? My daddy. Here's a standing podium on an old wheel frame, a wheel hub. His daddy done it. And there it remained. It's been useful. The teaching of how many Bible classes. The sister who puts up bulletin boards that influence, that congratulate, who inspire and say, look at our students in our classes, and you have ages as they grow up. The designer and maintainer of a website where individuals can click and hear sermons or Bible class lessons. Maybe a man from India or Africa can go to that website and hear and be challenged or taught the basics. A warm meal lovingly prepared for those who have gathered here at Reba's house. Not too long ago, Bible call or World Bible booklets that are sent to those who request Bible correspondence courses. Works that have influenced. It's those individuals who said, here am I, use me. Here am I, send me. The power of one. I think of Stephen there in Acts 5 and 6. After preaching and convicting the Israelites of killing Jesus Christ, they took him out and stoned him. They prayed the very prayer that Christ offered on the cross. God, please forgive them. When he died, he gave up the ghost. Stephen, one, first martyr, who didn't refrain, who did not allow his mouth to be closed, but he continued to give God the glory and to preach the truth. How about Dorcas or Tabitha? When she died, how many people are looking and sorrowful for this one person's absence? Looking at the clothes and things that she had made and given away. And she was brought back to life. How many more stories can we see? The power of one. How about Barnabas, who stood up for Saul, who would become the Apostle Paul, and telling the people, don't be concerned about Saul. He's one of us now. Yes, he persecuted the church at one time, but he's been converted. Allow him to preach and to teach the gospel. Receive him. He's a brother. Oh, what encouraging statement from Barnabas. Power of one. You as an individual, your influence is necessary in someone's life. In a grandchild's life. They may need that encouragement because mother and father have been neglectful. We have a place that we can stand up and we can make a difference in someone's life with simply faith and knowledge of God's Word. We can encourage and teach. We can challenge. And that one person that we help might become a president, might become the next elder, might become a preacher. I don't know how many times I've heard of preacher families, whether it's the Keel family or several other names that don't come to me right now, but out of that family, there's 5 or 6 young men, sons, grandsons, who've been challenged with the idea, make a difference, be a preacher. And a number have received and welcomed that call, and they're out there in the vineyard, because one grandmother or one grandfather said, you can do it. Who are you looking to influence, to help that one person? The power of one. Nehemiah, he influenced a nation, and they rebuilt. And because of him and others, when the time Jesus Christ came to this world to walk as a human being, the time was right. The time that God says he's coming. And he came and provided an example for you and me. Oh, look up the article that says the solitary life. One solitary life. I think I've used it recently. If I put it in the bulletin, I believe, find it and read about he had no armies, but he conquered the world. Had no libraries, but one book that tells the whole story. On and on it goes. What if Jesus had not been willing? Let's be willing. Are you ready to be that one?